I'm Spontaneity. My name is Abraham Deweese. I'm back again with the Soul Man Brian Solak and our guest, Teren. Help me out with the last name. No,
Kowatsch.
Kowatsch. Okay.
What was that? Sorry.
Oh, so it's okay. I saw
Yes.
W.
Yeah, no, it's a German last name. The pronunciation's a little weird.
Well, welcome, Teren, to the show. It's finally nice to meet you in person. I mean, we talked on the internet, but it's nice to put a face. And thank you for taking the time to join us. And I don't know if you got a chance to check us out on salesportrading.com, but appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
absolutely. I thank you guys for having me. I've seen your content, like you said, on the internet, and it's been great to see what you guys have done.
Absolutely. Right on. Right on. Appreciate that. I know we talked pre-show, but I know you grew up in Idaho and you were a vandal, even though you could have gone across the border to be a Coug there. what? Why did you go to the University of Idaho? I have to ask.
Well, part of it was cost. I was
Yeah.
Idaho resident, Idaho born and raised, in state, all that stuff, but also come from a whole family of vandals. My aunt went there, my dad went there, my mom went there. Um, and even outside of just my immediate family, there's a big Palouse connection there. My uncle went to Washington State. My younger sister went to Washington State. So it, you know, really good core family there, and it just made sense cost wise, and it was a school I was familiar with, a school that you grow up, you go to Vandals games, you don't see them win that often, but you still go, and it was just yeah, it just was kind of my family's adult home pretty much throughout my life, and yeah, I loved my 5 years of undergrad there, and I'm proud to be a Vandal.
Nice, nice. Make sure you give props to your family members though that went to Wazoo.
Yep.
Appreciate that. What you majored in? You got in sports journalism? Is that correct? Or
Yeah, in journalism, it was fun. I actually
okay.
started as a music education major, and switched my junior year because I realized I would be a very bad teacher. Um, so I was working for the student newspaper at the time and the student radio station, Argonaut and KUOI, and it made sense. It was something that when you go through college applications and you're wondering what you want to do, journalism was something that I'd always wanted to do. It's just music made more sense for me at the time because I was a band kid doing all that stuff, but I was doing student media at the time. It just made sense to make that my career, and I think I made the right decision.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will get to it, but I love following you on I'm going to call it Twitter because to my eyes it's Twitter, and also following you on Facebook as well. And tell our fans and our audience where you work.
Yeah, I am the one of the reporters for the Mariners on Sports Illustrated, Mariners on SI website. Got hired about a year ago. It's kind of part of the new endeavor Sports Illustrated is doing with Minute Media. A whole bunch of team sites, but owned by different publishers, or operated by different publishers, and uh, kind of right place, right time. I was looking for a job, and they were kind of still rolling out, testing what sites they were going to do, and I happened to be living in Pomeroy, Washington at the time, working in Lewiston, Idaho, and uh, but it just timing matched up perfect. I've been doing this for a year since, and with Brady Farkas, who's the other writer for Mariners on SI, and also Refuse to Lose podcast, host that, and it's been great experience.
Before I get into that, where's Pomeroy, Washington? No offense, I've
No,
I've lived here for 54 years almost. I've never heard of it.
it's one of the small eastern Washington towns, kind of flirting with the Idaho border a little bit. It's about half-hour drive from Lewiston. I'm trying to think here. Half hour from Lewiston, about hour and a half ish from Pullman. Just a small town. I think it's like 2,000 people. It's if you're familiar with Washington high school sports classifications at all, it's a 1B school, so it's
Okay.
small. So yeah, just I was staying there for 6 months before I took this job, and just to save money and all of that stuff, adult things, and it was great.
Awesome. I'm assuming, again, I have to ask, have you heard of Uniontown, Washington?
Yes, I actually I lived in Pullman for a bit, and while I was working at the Tribune before I moved to Pomeroy, and that was on the commute. It was you take the highway south and you go through Colton and Uniontown every single time.
Awesome. It just brings back memories. When I was married, my first year of marriage, I worked at the Eleanor's Corner Saloon in Uniontown, Washington.
Hmm.
In fact, I should have brought the article, but maybe I'll post a picture on the internet and I'll tag you. But I was a bartender there, and one of the best
Nice.
experiences of my lifetime. It was a small town; everybody knew each other, and great experience. I don't think they're open anymore, but that was about 30 years ago.
Yeah, when I was in high school, the bakery was open there still, and
Okay.
me and my friend went there a couple times, and still to this day, some of the best uh, pastries I've ever had. I think they closed a while ago, but it was really really good.
Nice. Right on. Appreciate that. Okay, so you're at Sports Illustrated, you're working with the Mariners. Is it the Mariners in particular, or are you doing other things like minor leagues? Or what else? I mean, what's your job consist of?
Mostly Mariners, but minor leagues. The minor league website was something we launched a couple months ago as part of kind of our whole banner under our current publisher, and so I've been. It's still mainly the articles I contribute to that site are still Mariners focused, but when you have a farm system of 9 top 100 prospects, there's a lot to write about. So
Yeah.
have been contributing to that and mostly the Mariners site. Occasionally, there's the Fastball on Sports Illustrated site, which is kind of just general MLB. Contribute to that every once in a while, and uh, once in a blue moon, I'll get a chance to do other stuff. When Indiana was in town playing uh, University of Washington men's basketball, the University of Indiana is another site under our publisher, so I got to write an article and help with that a little bit. But yeah, about 95% of my articles and everything's for Mariners and minor leagues.
Okay. And I know you mentioned you currently live in Seattle area. So are you at every home game, or do they let you travel on the road too? Or
Every home game for right now. I went to about a week of spring training in March. Got to see the spring breakout game. But yeah, for right now, it's every single home game. I'm here. When they're on the road, I'll cover them remotely. But if playoffs happen, then that'll probably be something I can get out there and cover. But for right now, every single home game.
okay, that's exciting. And I mean, in my eyes, I grew up loving baseball and working for the Seattle Sports Union. Abraham, my boss, he recruited me back in, I think it was 2016. We went to high school together. We'll say that for another show. We'd love to have you on the future because Abe likes to make fun of me. But we reconnected at an Aqua Sox game, and he invited me to work for the Seattle Sports Union. We covered the Everett Aqua Sox mainly, and it's just the best experience I've ever had. If I could do it for life, I would. I know I'm old, but it's so fun.
Oh, absolutely. I went to an Aqua Sox game last year. I think it was their last one of the season against the Spokane Indians, and I got to talk to Laz, Michael, Colts. I think I also had a chance to talk to Charlie Condone.
Okay.
And it was great. I mean, the experience, just talking to them was great, but also just the experience of watching them. We talked pre-show. I used to live in Meridian, which is kind of a suburb of Boise, so I went to a lot of Boise Hawks games when I was a kid. So minor league baseball, that whole environment's just it's so unique even within baseball, and I love every single time I get the chance to go to a minor league game or cover one.
Nice. Did you ever make it like across the border to Spokane Indians or any games growing up? Or
Yeah, when I lived in Post Falls, it's kind of sandwiched right between Coeur d'Alene and Spokane. So there was a couple times where I got to go to Spokane Chiefs game, the hockey team, and the Indians game, and I think it's a Vista Field, really nice minor league ballpark, really nice.
why do you say that?
As you
Just
said, most
oh,
of play uh, back in the day. So it's got that much larger than my.
oh,
A
okay.
question on the topic of my list. Any concerns with the new way about uh, the new regulations the MLB has uh, on minor league teams? You mentioned the Boise Hawks. They're no longer single A. They're Pioneer League. It looks like the MLB's might fall. Concerns there.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate just circumstance of the new CBA and everything. On one hand, you want these minor league guys to be able to make more money while they're down there. You want them to be able to just, not scrape by more than they have to, already trying to make the big leagues and under that kind of pressure. And then, don't want them to eat ramen noodles every night. You want them to be paid for their work. But at the same time, these teams, I mean, it's just, some of them are small, Eugene, obviously a bigger town, but some of them are just small town teams, or they're in, more limited markets than some other squads. So uh, I do think there will be some clubs that unfortunately fold or will go independent, which is not ideal, but at the same time, I think that that a lot of the more established minor league clubs will find a way to persist, because there's some clubs that even being minor leagues or having been different levels of affiliates over the years are just so ingrained with their towns and their communities that I just some of them will be around for as long as they want to be, but yeah, I mean, there's just going to be a lot of shifting. I mean, we're going to see that this next year with the Modesto Nuts and the 66ers, just within the Mariners system. So there'll be a lot of shifting. There'll be some clubs that unfortunately fold, which you never like to see. But yeah, it's just a trade-off. You also want to see these minor league guys get paid, but this might be an unfortunate cause of that, is just less teams.
Okay. How familiar are you with the Everett Aquasox situation with the new stadium?
I remember writing an article about it during the off season, and if I'm remembering it correct, it's been a while since I revisited it, but it was a matter of either um, adding, either rebuilding or whatever the word is, the existing stadium, or making a new one. And I think, if I'm correct, the bill or legislature passed for the new stadium lot. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that'll be good. I think it'll be interesting. It'll be good to, just have great facilities for the minor league guys to be there. And I think Funko Field, is obviously it shares the lot, the area with the high school, but I think the field itself is really, really nice. It's really great, and it's a little bit of a bummer that it won't be in use anymore with the Aqua Sox, but I think having a modern facility up to MLB standards will be good, and I think the light rail station won't be here for a while, but I think when that's built, it'll bring a lot of traffic to the stadium down the road, and I think that'll be good, just economically, and yeah, it makes sense. I mean, when you go into kind of the weeds of stadium renovation and redesign, it's eventually it gets to a point pretty quickly where it costs more to just keep a facility up to date than it is to just make a new one. But
Definitely.
They're right next to us.
yeah,
And then also, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, the minor league soccer.
That's the plan. I don't know if it's been written in stone yet, but yes, that's a plan. So we'll see what happens. if this may sound like a weird question, but if we were the Aqua Sox needed, some promotion via an expert writer like yourself, Teren, is that something you'd be able to write an article about, to promote getting a new stadium, getting, more voters involved, or do you have to go by what SI says?
Yeah, I mean, direct promotion is, that's something I kind of always clarify to people who might say I'm like too negative or something in like a column, is that my job is journalism. It's not always PR, but I do
Yeah.
but you know, uh, stadium for a minor league team in the Mariners system, that is news. So that's information I can write. I mean, we just mentioned I did write the article about
Yeah.
the new stadium lot being passed through legislature. So yeah, I would definitely be able to write it. It's consistent with Mariners news, and I do want to just go out to more minor league games in Tacoma and Everett this year to talk to the players and also cover them. And yeah, just personally, it's always something I like to do. Just going out to the minor league team. It's a completely different feel and environment than an MLB team in a good way. So yeah, I mean, I definitely can't do like direct PR, but writing about it within the vein of this being Mariners news, I can definitely do.
Okay, nice, very nice. I definitely want to get to Mariners questions here, but I have to ask before we get to the physical Mariner questions. Mariners got the third pick in the draft this year. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you're up to date as much as you can with the prospects coming out, but in your opinion, who did the Mariners draft with the third pick and why?
It's so hard. There's so many good players in this year's draft.
Yeah.
If I were to put a stamp on anyone right now who I think the Mariners should draft, I think they should go Ava Arquette, the shortstop out of Oregon State.
Okay.
I know it's kind of a embarrassment of riches at that point, having a whole bunch of middle infielder prospects, because you have Colt coming up. You just promoted Cole to the big leagues, and then you have Felnine Celestin, who's also really good. Michael Arroyo too. So adding Arquette to that mix is going to be, you do risk a log jam or something similar down the road, but he's just so polished as a player. His power tool played has really developed this year at Oregon State, and that was really the only thing missing from his game. Great bat to ball skills, fielding stellar, great physical profile. I think he's 6'3" or 6'4" as a shortstop, which is great range in the field. And he's polished enough as a prospect that he's probably not in the minor leagues for more than 2 years.
Okay.
And I think that having a polished prospect like that is something that the Mariners haven't really done in the past few years. They've gone with a lot of high school guys. And I think kind of putting him in that group of guys who are going to be coming up, I think having him, Laz, Arroyo, and Colts kind of all in that group to get that 2026, 2027 call-up group can only help the Mariners. I think having that many guys that can be that caliber of player is just going to help. And there's going to be a lot of people who really put an emphasis on them drafting a pitcher, which I also wouldn't have a problem with them doing, just with everything that's going with the starting rotation and the fact that in terms of top 100 guys, you have Durangelo and Ryan, who are a couple years out, and then they moved Brandon Garcia to the bullpen, so his major league aspirations might not be as a starter anymore. So I think they could go either which way if they did draft a pitcher. I wouldn't be up here saying that's the wrong move, but I really think having Arquette would be great, just to have a guy that would be major league ready really quick and who's already really polished as a player.
Can he play third base? I mean, nothing against Williamson, but can Arquette play third base?
I don't know. Every single game I've watched him, he's been a shortstop, but I wouldn't be surprised if he could learn.
Okay, I like to hear that. So in summary, then, with the third pick of the draft, the Mariners take the best player available on the board.
I think that's where they're going to go, and that might be Arquette at 3. That might be Jamie Arnold. It just depends on who they have higher on the board.
Fair enough. I like Jamie Arnold too, but I like what you have to say. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, they do a great job anyways, but it's really exciting to have the third pick of the draft.
Oh, it's great. They have so many options. So many.
Very, very, very true. I guess we have to move on to the Mariners. I know.
Let's
Wait.
I guess if I mean interject here. Now the draft. Why are they not as talent value? Which one?
Yeah. Well, this is like something I've talked about with a couple people. If you look at their quote unquote big signings of the past couple years, hindsight's 2020, and we can look at them in the context of now. But signing Donovan Solano to $3.5 million, he was coming off a really good season with the Padres and historically high average hitter, like really good contact, gets on base consistently. And he's been doing that over the last few games. You know, he didn't do that during the first couple months, but he did do that during the last few games. And then Mitch Garver is coming off a major contributor to a World Series winning team. You know, and he was originally, I think the plan was going to have him be designated hitter. They weren't going to have him be like the designated backup catcher originally. And again, yeah, he hasn't performed as well as many players or many fans would have hoped. But in that context of that offseason, that was a good signing. And then Polanco, again, I mean, a lot of fans were less apprehensive towards that move because they knew in the offseason what he went through with everything with his injury. But and even then, he had a slow May. He's trying to pick it up again, but you see in April what he was capable of doing when he was completely healthy and ready to go. So I do think there's a lot to criticize the front office for. I think you can look to a lot of trades and say that you did not get even close to fair value on those trades, like even with the context of either moving off salary or trying to rebuild that position or open it up. I think you can, you know, point toward, you know, potential, you know, snafus and long-term roster planning with now Harry Ford kind of being blocked off from getting promoted a little bit. But I think that with the limited budget that Jerry has had and with the moves he made, yes, with hindsight, we know that those were bad moves now, but while they were made or when they were made, they weren't bad in the moment. So that
It made sense.
yeah.
And eventually players do something.
That's the other thing too is
You did mention Harry Ford, but I see people. I'm going to say they're crying online. Why don't you bring Harry up? Blah blah blah. Get rid of Mitch Garver. But where are they going to put Harry Ford? I mean, the guy needs to play at least 5 games a week, in my opinion. I mean, are they going to play him catcher once and DH 4 times? I mean, what are your thoughts?
yeah, I mean that's the question, right? I mean, if you do call him up, unless you open up designated hitter, he's not going to be playing consistently. And even if they move Polanco back to the field, which they did in the series finale against the Diamondbacks, had him play second, you still have Luke Raley coming back.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do at that point?
Yep.
You can have Luke at first, Polanco at second, or platooning with Yun at second potentially, so kind of rotating them two, but then Yun doesn't really get as much runway anymore because you're taking opportunities from him, and he's starting to heat up now. His bat's starting to really come through a little bit in recent games. And so now you're having these two guys that had slow stretches who are just starting to pick up and now won't be able to play consistently. And then Garver, if you do move off from him, you're eating $12 million. And you're already eating the money from moving on from Mitch Haniger. The Leody Taveras experiment is over, so you're eating that $3.5 million or whatever it was. So you're looking at close to $30 million in money that you're just eating that you're not using to any player. So that's something that might not be good. And it really is a situation where at this point, Rowdy's on a minor league contract, so he could potentially be gone after this year. He's doing what they signed him to, hit home runs and just be the power guy. But if they don't re-sign him and Mitch Garver, they keep him on the roster this year but let him walk, then you have DH and backup catcher role open for Ford. Rotate him and Cal in that, and then you can bring someone else in for when you want to give Cal an off day in 2026. And I think that unless they really, really want to capitalize on the hot streak that Harry Ford is on right now, I think that might be what they do. I think it's less likely this year that they trade him than it was last year. But I do think that he's going to get his chance in the majors eventually. I'm just not quite sure if it's going to be this year. If he does, I think it's going to be Polanco moves out to the field, or they just cut into his time a little bit, give him more rest days. Platoon Harry at DH potentially with Rowdy. There's a limited amount of options on what you can do to give Harry enough playing time, and I think that's kind of what's halting his comeback right now. I want to see him in the major leagues too, because he's doing really good in AAA. He's probably more polished as a hitter than Cole was, or at the very least more consistent than Cole was when he was called up. And I think he'd be valuable offensively. I don't know if he would just be off to a blazing start right away, but I think he'd be able to be a decent contributor in the lineup. But I just don't know if there's a spot for him where you can give him consistent at-bats and not kind of log jam another position a little bit. So I think it's more likely they just wait to bring him up until next season.
Understood. That makes sense. But if he continues his torrid pace down in Tacoma, honestly, if we're still in it to win the West come trade deadline, is that a possibility he's gone?
I think a lot of teams are going to ask for him. And like I said, I think it's less likely he's traded this year than he was last, because his stock was kind of lower just because his stats weren't great in AA at the time. And, they were trying him in the outfield, seeing what he could possibly do there. But I think he's going to be someone the teams call for a lot, but the Mariners also like to kind of plan ahead a little bit. And I think with Garver's contract expiring, I don't see them moving Harry Ford unless it's included in a package for a really big name. And I don't know how competitive the Mariners are going to be if a big name is available, just for the fact that Logan Gilbert's probably untouchable. Not probably, he is.
Yeah.
Cal Raleig's untouchable. Julio Rodriguez is untouchable. Brian Wu is probably untouchable. I think the starting rotation, again, unless it's like superstar caliber player they're getting, I don't think they're going to break it up. I think if they were going to move a starting pitcher, it would have been in this previous offseason. And you look at all of that, you take the starting rotation off the board, or at least most of it. You take Cal, Julio off the board. There's not a whole lot of major league talent that you can kind of package without including a top 100 prospect if you're looking to get like an all-star level contributor or an all-star level bat. So because of that, I think a lot of teams are going to inquire about him. I think the Mariners are just going to say no. I think they really want to see what Harry Ford can do, especially with Cal in the lineup. And we mentioned the middle infield and how many prospects they have there. I think if they do package a top 100 prospect, it'll be from that group. I don't think it's going to be Colt just because he's their top prospect. That leaves Michael and Felning, and it'll take a really significant player for the Mariners to do that. But Harry, I just don't. I think if he was going to be moved, it would have been last year. I don't, unless it's a superstar, I just don't see them moving him.
Okay, what are the chances then of someone like they going after like a Luis Robert Jr. or Ryan O'Hearn or fill in the blank?
I think they'll definitely inquire about Ryan O'Hearn. I think a lot of teams will, but I think they'll definitely inquire about him, and that might be a situation where Baltimore kind of tries to push their luck a little bit with wanting a few prospects. I think they're going to be more inclined. Baltimore would be more inclined to accept major league talent in return for Ryan because they're. I think they're not going to try and like just soft rebuild again. I think they're going to try and get this right as soon as next season. I think they're going to try their best to make sure that this year is just one down year and then they're back to being contenders. But Luis Robert Jr., I definitely think there's something there. I mean, there's only so much smoke until it becomes an actual fire. You know, we've heard the Mariners mentioned as a team interested in him for going on 3 years now, I think, close to that. You know, and his stock is at an all-time low, and the White Sox are one of the few teams that I think would accept like a prospect, mainly prospect or entire prospect package in return for him. If I were to put my chips in a hat for one player specifically, I do think it would be Luis Robert Jr. I do think the Mariners could get Ryan O'Hearn. I just think it'll take a bigger package for them than they might be comfortable for, and they might pivot to another player because of that. And you know, again, I don't know how much it would take for them to do this, but I do think they're going to at least call and ask about Eugenio or Josh Naylor from Arizona. I think that if there's four names that the Mariners really try to go after, it would be those four: Eugenio, Josh Naylor, Luis Robert Jr., and Ryan O'Hearn. I don't have any like insider knowledge on that. This is just my speculation on what I've seen from reports and also just what makes sense for the team at this point. But yeah, I would say of all the players they've been mentioned, and I see more likelihood for it to be Robert Jr. Yeah, well, that's the thing too is I was looking this up earlier, and now I'm forgetting it. I should have written it down. But Josh Naylor's contract, it was I think 11 million. So if we're just assuming half the year's salary, that would be about 5.5 million. The Mariners would have to pay Eugenio. I think he's making 18, so they would pay him 9. Ryan O'Hearn, I think is about. Actually, I'm unsure how much Ryan O'Hearn Jr. is making right now, but it would be roughly $5 to $9 million range for them to take it out, and that's better than what it would have been if they acquired these players in the offseason. I think it's if this was last year's trade deadline, I would say no, because we've heard the reports and we understand that just a restricted budget. But what they've done this year with eating Mitch Haniger's contract, releasing him, being fine with DFAing Leote after it just didn't work out, and kind of taking on that $3.5 billion for nothing. I think they're more open to taking on that cost this year, and I think that 9-series win streak earlier in the season really helped with that. I think that was a perfect encapsulation of what the team could do when it's at its best. And with Luke Raley coming back and Logan Gilbert coming back, I think that there's more inclination now in striking when the iron is hot. And I do think that Jerry and Justin in that front office has more to work with this year compared to last year. With that being said, I think if the choice is, taking on the $5 million from Josh Naylor compared to the $9 million in Eugenio, and the prospect packages are similar, I think there might be more of an inclination to take on the cheaper option. But Eugenio also was such a fan favorite, and he's loved in the locker room, that maybe that just wins out even with his increased salary. But I do think that in terms of getting these guys that I mentioned, kind of in that range, that $5 to $10 million range, I don't think that'll be an issue for this trade deadline.
Okay, that makes sense. I personally hope you mentioned some names. I hope Michael Arroyo gets traded. I think his ceiling's pretty high right now, and I think we got plenty of talent in that middle infield to where we can afford to let him go. We'll see. We'll see what happens, but that's who I'm hoping that they'll dangle at the trade deadline.
I think Michael could get a lot of value for sure.
The guy's amazing. He just gets on base. He gets on base like 2 times a game, it seems like, and he's got like 10 or 11 home runs already. The guy, for like, was he 5'9" or something? It's a pretty impressive watching him play. He's only 20 years old, I believe.
Yeah, and had 23 home runs last year.
Yeah, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I know we don't have too much longer, but the big dumper, Cal Raleigh, is he going to be the next American League MVP?
He'll be top 3 for sure at this pace. It's so hard because if he continues at this pace, he's going to have the best season for a catcher ever. Yeah. But Aaron Judge is also Aaron Judge. But voter fatigue is a thing, and I think that could help Cal get some votes. But if Aaron Judge wasn't in the AL, I would say absolutely at this point. But it's so hard because he's having such a no catcher has done what he's done in this frame earlier in the season.
Definitely.
But Aaron Judge is also just a literal monster. So it's hard. It's just a toss up between those two at this point.
Okay. No, I agree with that. That's fair. Ichiro, obviously it's a big year for Ichiro. He's going to the Hall of Fame, retiring his number. What are your thoughts on Ichiro? I mean, growing up in Idaho, and now you're covering the Mariners. What are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, he's a legend. He, during my generation, I mean, we missed Griffey by a couple years, a little bit, kind of my age group, my generation. So, for kids growing up in Idaho, Washington, Pacific Northwest, who are Mariners fans, Ichiro was it. I mean, disclosure here, I grew up in Idaho. I was a Red Sox fan growing up.
Yes, I'm a Red Sox fan too.
Okay, so there we go. But you're always Mariners adjacent when you're in the PNW. Okay. Like you know someone who's a Mariners fan, even if you're not. So Ichiro was just iconic. He was just a player that everyone knew, even people who didn't watch baseball, and he was just so extraordinary. I mean, it felt like for God, at least 5 years, you would turn on SportsCenter every single night during the summer, and it would be some clip of what he did. Even if the Mariners were just god awful, he would always do something extraordinary. And I'm so happy that he is getting the recognition he deserved because he did so much for the game of baseball. He should have been unanimous. I can't believe the one voter who left him off his ballot. But yeah, I mean he's just one of the most influential players of all time. I think it's just what he's done with kind of like opening or helping open the kind of like that whole Japanese market to MLB scouts and everything, and also just how great of a ball player he was. If it wasn't for Ricky Henderson, he'd have an argument as the greatest leadoff hitter of all time. So yeah, I he's not many players more deserving of it than him, and it'll be incredible to see his speech and everyone he thanks, because I'm sure it's going to be an incredibly long list. The retirement ceremony at the ballpark, I know, is going to be incredible. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him just have his moments because he deserves it.
Awesome. Yeah, my wife and I are going back to Cooperstown for the induction. I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome.
And we're taking a tour. We're starting with Boston. We're going to be seeing a Boston game against the Dodgers at Fenway, and it's going to be a fun experience.
That'll be great.
Little known fact too. I'm sorry, but I got to share. I named my cat after Dustin Pedroia. She's called Pedroia. So
nice. And I loved Pedroia.
Nice. Definitely one of my favorite players of all time.
Oh, he was so great.
Very true. Dan Wilson versus Scott Servais. How do can you compare the two, or are they completely different?
So they're just but influencing.
Yeah.
Teren, I think the light from Windows washing fix that.
Yeah.
There we go.
uh, yep. It's just the time of day over here. Yep. Man, that's so hard. I only knew Scott or talked to him for about a month and a half before he got fired, so I didn't get a chance to get to know him as much as other reporters have. But I think Dan is they're both kind of players managers in the fact that they will just always go to bat for their guys, point blank period. But I think Dan is capable of entering into a tense or potentially volatile situation and not mellowing it out, because Scott had to navigate some pretty tumultuous stuff himself. But I think Dan understands really how to navigate that at a really unique level. Just because you look at the teams he was on when he played for the Mariners, I mean he was on some of the greatest teams ever and some of the worst. So I think that experience and that background has really kind of helped him learn how to navigate a clubhouse and the different personalities and really incredibly well. Scott, I think, was really good at just kind of setting a course and sticking with it. And it's so hard because I think they're both very similar and very different in a lot of ways. I think Dan might have a slightly better temperament, but I think they were both good. I think Dan's a good manager, and I think Scott was a good manager, and I think they both were given very hard tasks when they got hired. And I think that Scott, I mean, getting hired when you have all this expectation and then being told like year 2, year 3 into your tenure, oh, we're going to rebuild it, we're going to blow it up, but you're going to be fine. And then having to navigate that and then finally rebuilding the team and then helping lead them to the playoffs, but then also the last 2 seasons missing the playoffs in the final week of the season or getting eliminated in the final week. It was a lot for him, and then for Dan to kind of like take over in the middle of that. Both very difficult situations, and I think both have done it very well. But if I would say the biggest difference, I would say Dan can navigate a clubhouse and personalities a little bit better, but Scott is very, very focused when there's a goal or a direction set and pulling the team to that point.
Okay. Well, fair enough answer. That makes sense. I like Dan Wilson, and I hope things get better for him. I mean, obviously he had a good run there. It's not over, obviously, but I like to see him stick with Seattle for a long time. So we'll see what happens. I mean, hopefully Jerry and Justin can pull off a deal or two here at the deadline to make this team better, and ownership can open up their pocketbooks. But I got to have faith. I know.
Yep. We'll see. It's going to be an interesting next month and a half until the deadline for sure.
Very true. Very true. I don't know if I saw you posted it or what, but it might have been from where I saw you posted on your social media. But Justin Hollander mentioned recently, not verbatim in quote, but he said, "We've been struggling. There's not enough contribution for both sides, offense and defense, and it happens." I mean, is that an acceptable answer, or whatever I'm trying to say?
I mean, I think it's acceptable in terms of like that's been what's happening. I mean, you would like more clarity on where the team is looking to improve in and stuff like that, but they're not gonna give away their cards or anything like that. And I mean, like I said, yeah, what he said has been what's happening, and it was kind of a problem the second half of last year too. On days where the offense shows up, pitching staff struggles, bullpen, or this year the starters, especially with all the injuries, and vice versa too. I mean, George Kirby had that 14 strikeout game in the last game against Los Angeles, and they won 3-2, 1-run game for 14 strikeouts. So I think that it's a fair answer, and I understand fans want more detailed explanation on clarity on how this is going to get fixed, but the Justin and Jerry aren't going to just publicly say like, oh yeah, we're going hard after reunion with Eugenio, get ready guys. They're not going to say that. So I think Justin he speaks very frankly a lot, and I think that during the offseason he had a lot of very just very upfront interviews, and I think that was another example of that. Yeah, and glass half full for fans. It's good to at least know that the front office is aware that things aren't quite good enough now, and that there do need to be some improvements. But in terms of specifics, it's just you kind of gotta wait and see what they do or what they don't do.
Okay. I do have to ask. You mentioned Durangelo Saint earlier, our ambidextrous pitcher. He got hurt again last night, the second time in the last 2 weeks. Is this something? Is this a concern?
Um, I mean, you kind of can't be anything else but concerned. I mean, two early polls is not great, and especially considering how this last start, he was supposed to start the Saturday before, then he got scratched, which means that whatever he's dealing with didn't progress the way they thought. Most of the time, Justin Hollander provides injury updates and stuff in the first game of the homestand, so I'm sure there will be something either tomorrow or Saturday about it. But yeah, I mean, and especially with him, he's such a high velocity pitcher from the right side. With touching triple digits, has a lot of breaking stuff. It's hard to see two early polls and not be concerned. But I think they'll definitely. I don't know what they did for this last poll or what the injury was or how serious they thought it was, but I definitely think if it's not something long term or serious, they'll give him more time on the shelf this time because yeah, they already scratched him late, and now they might do it again. So yeah, it's concerning though. I until there's a solid report, I wouldn't put solid red flags on it, but it's definitely something concerning to look for.
Yeah, looked pretty. Last night's injury looked pretty nasty in my eyes. I watched it on TV, and he stumbling over first base like that.
Yeah,
something twisted. Hopefully, we'll pray that definitely it's not that serious. But like you said, we'll find out hopefully this weekend what management says. I got one last minor question before I know we got to wrap it up. Bryce Miller, in my opinion, he was brought back too quickly, not because he's hurt again, but I thought he was brought back too quickly. What are your thoughts?
I think that some front offices would have kept him out longer, but I also think he didn't need to be kept out any longer. I think the assumption was that he had this elbow inflammation caused by the bone spur, but based on what Justin said, the testing showed that the bone spur didn't seem to be too long-term of a thing. They didn't really anticipate any more care of it. They gave Bryce the cortisone shot. He felt good after his sim games and his bullpen. So at that point, if the player's feeling good, if your test isn't showing this is a season-ending thing, you bring the player back at this point unless you want to be super cautious. And it's just an unfortunate situation of the cortisone shot didn't have the effect that they wanted it to, so they're giving him a PRP shot now. I think that they wouldn't say that they didn't anticipate the bone spur if that's not what the test showed, or didn't anticipate the bone spur being a long-term thing. So I do think that they brought him back when they thought they could bring him back and when he could be effective. It's just a nagging injury of where their first treatment didn't work, so now they're trying a different one. Bryce kind of already said he didn't reveal it to be a bone spur at the time, but after his sim game in Houston, he did say that to operate on the bone spur would be to keep him out for the rest of the year. It would be a season-ending surgery. So I think they're trying to avoid that, and I don't think they would be going down that road unless they thought that was an avenue they could take. It is unfortunate that now he's on the IL again. And again, I talked about hindsight a couple times. You can't look back on that and say should have given him a couple rehab starts in Everett or Tacoma, see how he felt. But again, I think that they felt the cortisone shot would work, and Bryce felt like it would work, and it just didn't. So I wouldn't chalk that up to mismanaging the injury so much as it was an option that all parties thought could be effective, and it just wasn't.
Okay. I respect that answer. I might be a little biased because I got to interview him when he was with the Everett Aqua Sox, but
Yeah.
I really hope he's going to be okay. I mean, little known fact, maybe you already know this, but he didn't start pitching till his senior year in high school, and I just don't think he's been pitching that long to where something like this serious, they should rush him back until they're 100% sure. But again, that's just my opinion. So
yeah, I think it's fair. I think you can definitely take the assumption of like he should have had a couple of rehab starts.
Right on.
Yeah.
Abraham, do you have anything before we do our shout outs?
One last question I could ask, which is question about the strategy of the Mariners lately.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me like when we get into close games, we stop doing small ball, like we've seen from the Is that just me focusing on specific games, or is there something
I did notice there was a stretch where they weren't stealing as much or weren't as aggressive going to the bases, and I think that the mindset behind that is simply, don't want to give up an out. I think that it is more on the conservative approach late in games and close situations, and I think that's we know this front office likes to look at analytics and statistics. I think it's Mariners Mariners sixth or fifth in the league, top six for most of the year in home runs. Dylan Moore, he's kind of slowed down a little bit, but he had a great start to the year. He had Ben Williamson's been picking it up. Cole Young's been picking it up. So Miles Mastrobuoni has been generally okay to good in pinch hitting situations in recent weeks. So I think it's playing more to the conservative side. If you're in a situation where you're in the bottom half of the order, they've done enough to show they can do that. With that being said, I'm also partial to being aggressive until the final pitch. I think I think it's, I understand that's a conservative approach, and I understand that's bolstered by analytics and everything like that. But, when you have so many speedsters and so many guys in the bottom half of the order, in the top half too, with Randy and Julio that can get extra bases in close games, I think you just go full speed ahead and until the final pitch. But more conservative approach in closer games late has definitely been something I've noticed. Yeah.
Right on.
I saw the other teams on there. Girls recently. It seems like let's just wait for the home runs. It's not what that change.
Yeah. Yeah. And, well, we saw that in this last series too. They were getting guys on base early and getting them on frequently. They just weren't bringing them home. And that's something that Dan talked about a little bit. I think it's just they're missing that timely hit right now. Like you said, it could be the single, the double, it could be the home run sometimes. They're just not getting that timely hit when they need it. And it's kind of a baseball thing where you can't really coach your players to hit the ball when you have runners in scoring position. That's not just a switch you can flip. Yeah, but it's good to have like the problem kind of focused and identified like that. I mean, the starting pitching wasn't great this road trip either, except for George's outing and Emerson's outing against Arizona on the first game of the series. But they're getting runners on base, which is at least half the solution. Now you just got to bring them home.
Right. Well, we're getting to that commercial here, but we always like to end the show now. So I'll go ahead and get started. Just a quick shout out to my son Vincent. Lots of things work related that he's gonna just put his head down and chug through it, I guess. Over to you, Brian.
All right, I'm gonna give 3 quick shout outs. I'm gonna say happy Father's Day to my father and to my father-in-law. It's this Sunday. I love you both, and I'm very lucky to have you both in my life. Happy Father's Day to you too, Abraham, by the way.
Thank you.
And then, last but not least, I'm going to give a belated happy birthday to Patsy. She is the fiance of our fellow compadre from South Sports Union, Matthew Page. She had a big celebration last weekend, so happy birthday to her. And then before you give a shout out, Teren, I just want to say thank you from all of us at South Sports Union. Quite impressive what you've had to say. I mean, coming from a small town out of Idaho, and you really know your stuff, and we hope to have you on again one day. So, hopefully, you'll say yes.
Absolutely.
Right on.
Yeah, I'd love to be back.
And then I got to show you this real quick to Dustin Pedroia, my little bobblehead here.
That's so cool.
I knew you would appreciate it.
I love that.
Quick shout out to you, Teren. Do you have anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I'll give a quick shout out to early Father's Day to my father, but also shout out my mom. Both of them have been extremely supportive of my career and all the different routes that's taken and leading me ultimately to here. I wouldn't be here without either of their support. My stepdad Brian and my stepmom Stacy too. Just all of them have just been so supportive and so incredible. And yeah, I wouldn't have a chance to do what I'm doing now or be on this podcast with you guys if it wasn't for them. So yeah, just shout out to my mom, dad, Stacy, Brian. Love you guys. And yeah, and shout out to you guys for having me on the podcast.
We appreciate it.
Where can I find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Teren, TEREN _ Kowatsch, KOWATSCH. Can find me on Blue Sky too, same exact name. And you can also follow Mariners on SI on Facebook, Instagram, or go to our Mariners on SI site.
Unless you're old like us, besides
Sports Illustrated, yes. Mariners on Sports.
I guess it's still a magazine, but it's online.
Yeah, I'm online. The magazine still exists. I'm online.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Teren Kowatsch, for doing this as well for SI. Check out all the great content on YouTube as well as on podcasts. Check us out at SalesCoaching.com. And on behalf of Brian, the Soulman Solak, and myself, we'll see you guys next time.